How's it going, guys? John, the basic expert here, and I think this is going to be the final episode of this West End game Star Wars D6 series. I didn't want to go into too much detail of this game. It's a really simple game. It's not that there's so much, not that there's too much to talk about, but I could have gone into like the source book and whatnot, and maybe at some point I will. But then I feel like the source book ends up becoming a little too much like a Star Wars lore channel, which I am not. Because first of all, I'm not an expert on, and secondly, like, that's just not the goal of this channel. But I feel like, we relatively covered the basics of the West End game Star Wars D6 system, first edition, which I'm rather a fan of. I know people love their second edition in the Wild Die, but personally, that's just not my favorite thing. I really like the way that this game presented everything. It was very clear, concise, and I felt like I understood as I read this game. And I think it's an affordable game. Again, these are original copies here. They're as old as I am. I'm not that old of a guy, I guess. So these came out in '87. I was born in '87. I think I got this one for 50 and this one for 30. So very affordable books, and quite happy with where I got them from on eBay. They're in great shape. So very affordable, and the PDFs are free online. The Open D6 system is in at least the second edition is in the open game license called Open D6 now. So there is just like no excuse to not try this game. The access to playing it is just it's very affordable if you want to purchase it, and there's also variants out there that are free. So I want to kind of just do a recap over it, why I like West End game Star Wars D6, and we'll talk about what we'll cover in the future, and I'll leave it up to you guys. So what I like about it is, and I've mentioned it many times before, I like how this game sort of gives the players and the referee that feeling of this is really truly original trilogy Star Wars. The original trilogy, I've mentioned it before, and people might have an issue with that. I don't really care. I really love the mysticism of the Force in the original trilogy. Someone made a comment on the previous video about midichlorians, like, oh, it's just an indicator. Like, I don't care. Midichlorians are stupid and they don't exist in my Star Wars games. So, I really love how rare the Jedi are, how nobody, like, most of the Jedi have been wiped out and hunted down, they're in hiding, and therefore finding a teacher is very difficult. I love the die code system. I love the template system. I didn't like the template system at first when I read it, but reading it again and seeing how easy it is to make your own template, there's actually more freedom in this for character creation than in a lot of other games, including things like D&D and whatnot. So it's a skill-based game, which I enjoy. I love skill-based games. Cowpunchers is a mostly skill-based game, and the fantasy version of those rules, the application of those rules, will be a skill-based game. So I love Call of Cthulhu, for instance, as well. Traveler, classic Traveler. Skill-based games just have a special place in my heart. Same with D6s, which is what this game uses as well. So I love that aspect. I love how clear and concise the rules are written. I think you could tell that this game was written for kids at the time. Like, Star Wars was still, this is '87, so, what was it, like 5-6 years or so after Return of the Jedi had come out. So Star Wars was kind of in a slump at that point. It wasn't the big hot thing at the time. And, but, kids still loved Star Wars. And so this was something that was definitely written for kids, but obviously adults can enjoy it too. I love the ease of running the game too. Currently I'm doing a West End game Star Wars D6 play-by-post on the Gilded server, and it's been kind of fun. We're doing the kind of adventure. There's an assassin robot, HK. There's Sarge, who's played by Victor Gorchev, who's an aging clone, who's just a mercenary looking for work. There's a human pilot, Captain Smuggler guy, and another smuggler named Ren. And then Eowyn, who's I forget the race. We custom. That's the beauty of the rules, is that you're able to, like, if there's a race out there in the expanded universe that there wasn't really official information on, like, you could create those templates and a player could, like, play that. And I've talked a lot about restrictions in the game, and in games. Like I in my D&D games, I restrict classes, I restrict races. I try, I don't do tieflings, I don't do dragonborn. I keep it pretty strictly old school with the traditional fantasy races. I don't even allow half-orcs in my AD&D game. But mostly that's just due to setting reasons rather than because I don't really like half-orcs, but that's not the reason why I limit it. It's just in my setting, the way I wanted to have evil creatures, and it's a whole different thing. And I had a lore reason for as to why, like, orcs are essentially like lesser demons to a degree, like tribal lesser demons, rather than uh, they're more demon-like and spiritual rather than human-like or humanoid-like, I guess. So, but Star Wars is one of those games where, like, if a player comes to me with something from the expanded universe and they're like, I want to try and make this race to be this character, it exists in the expanded, it exists in Star Wars. Like, sure, you can be that. Star Wars is a game where I feel I am 100% okay with players kind of going a little gonzo with the races that they want to be. They want to be the weird, like, Velociraptor race where they're just like Velociraptors that use computers. Like, that's fine. So it fits this game a lot better than it does, for instance, like D&D, the way I run it, for instance. So I'm okay with that. But we're running a play-by-post game, and they're playing more like smugglers. They're a crew of a ship. They're in debt to the Black Sun. They were on Manda, and they were trying to work with the Boabab, I believe that's how you pronounce it, merchant fleet. And so they had just gone from Manda to Mongaza, which is like a spice mining planet, and to bring supplies to this poor planet. And while there, they've been, well, before they left, they've been contacted to try and smuggle spice to a separate planet that is under Imperial control. And I tempted them with it because they're in massive debt. Like, they got quite a loan on their ship because of the Black Sun syndicate, and the amount that they will make from smuggling spice will cover that month's rent and or mortgage on the ship and then some. So to me, it's almost like Traveler Light, the way you could run the game like that, because I'm using the Scamp Freighter, I think it is, book as well for a lot of the trade rules and whatnot. So it is like Traveler Light, which I like. As you guys know, I'm a fan of Traveler. So they're doing that, and now that they're on Mongaza, the guy that they're picking up the spice from to smuggle is sort of like, hey, I have some competition here on Mongaza. It'd be really nice if you guys could do something about it. And he offered to pay them even more credits. So it's risky, but they're gonna try and take out this guy's opposing spice dealing opposition. So that's kind of where the game is at right now. And so far, I think it's been pretty fun. This game works really well as play by post because the rules are so light and so simple. That we're just playing it on a gilded server and with dice rolling bots, and it's super easy. So I love that aspect of this game. All in all, this is definitely a game that I think works really well for one shots. You could take this to a table and do a one shot, and even if you just do templates and apply the 7D, or you're splitting up one of those D for pips, for the 3 pips that you could apply, 3+1s or a +2 and a +1. Even if you're just doing that and you run it as a one shot, like the characters are going to be pretty survivable. Because one thing you have to understand about this, in my opinion, but this is not like D&D. This is more of a story style game. This probably has more in common with Call of Cthulhu, for instance, as like a more narrative-driven game than it does Dungeons and Dragons. So it's definitely a different flavor and a different style. But I think because of that, it works really well for one-shots. I think Call of Cthulhu works really well for one-shots. Like, you could run a bunch of one-shot mysteries for people in Call of Cthulhu and have a really good time. You could run a bunch of one-shot adventures for this. This time you're rebels, this time you're smugglers. Like, you could do lots of different stuff like that all across the galaxy as like 1 or 2 session long, 3 session long adventures. And I think people would have a lot of fun. And overall, you might have actually a pretty long running campaign where they're kind of dropping in and out of different characters. Or you could go the traditional route. It's going to work just fine, the traditional route of they're going to play the same characters throughout the entirety of the campaign. and you can do long running campaigns in this. There's plenty of material out there to help you run long-term campaigns. I'm going to link in the video below to this massive Star Wars map that I'm using for my play-by-post game that you can use for your game. I think it's highly useful, highly recommend you check it out. So that link will be in the video description below. But yeah, I really love this. As a kid that grew up watching Star Wars, I wanted to be Luke Skywalker. Reading this book, I've said it a million times before, it just made me feel like that 12-year-old kid that is in love with Star Wars again, which is something hard to do. Like, Mandalorian Season 1 almost made me feel excited for Star Wars again. I got really excited. Season 2 wasn't as great, and the Book of Boba Fett was pretty bad. But this, like, reading these books and looking at the art, looking at the prose, the way it's written, it just made me excited about Star Wars again. Like, it made it, like, it's like, it allowed me, and maybe it's because it's a role-playing game, I feel like it gave me the freedom in my head to kind of go, like, all this extra Disney canon stuff that I don't particularly like, I can make my own universe with this. And I love how rules light it is. I love how simple it is to run. So I highly recommend West End Games Star Wars D6. If you're able to get your hands on some physical books, whether it's the reprints that came out from Fantasy Flight Games or originals like what I got here, please print them, get the print copies. PDFs are available. I'll just put the link in the video's description below where you can get the PDFs for free. They are there. You could print them up yourself and bind them. I have a comb binder, for example, so I could print up my own versions and comb bind them. But you know, it's it's just a good game. It's just a really good game. West End Games really knocked this game out of the park, in my opinion. And you know, we owe the expanded universe to this game. Prior to Disney taking over and wiping it clean, like, that stuff that stuff still exists. That stuff is still there, and to me, it's still more Star Wars than anything Disney's made. But they were the progenitor of that, and I just think that that's so cool. This book in particular, as well as the Rebel source book and the Imperial source book as well, which I don't have, and I'm going to look for copies of those myself, because I'd like to have those physical copies. I have the PDFs, but I'd love to have physical copies of those. Reading a physical book is just so much easier for me. I hate reading PDFs and learning from PDFs rule systems. So that's partly why I bought these originals, because it was like, I want to be able to read a physical book and really understand this game for this purposes of this video series. So yeah, I'm running a play-by-post game. I think I'm going to eventually maybe run a one-shot for my in-person group. I think that'd be fun. Just take a break from our BX game, maybe run a session or two of this for them. I think that could be a lot of fun. So yeah, tell me what you think. What kind of adventures, what kind of campaigns did you run for West End Games Star Wars D6? Did you do the smuggler, galactic scum sort of game like I'm doing, or was it heroic Jedi and rebels fighting the Imperial forces? How did you run your games? Did you run both? I'm always open running both. It just seemed like, for what I wanted to do with my play-by-post game, the Imperial scum angle would work a lot better. So I think that's going to do it for these West End Games Star Wars D6 videos. It's such a simple game. This is not as long of a series as others. Like, when you look at this here, like when you go to the basics of the game here, see if I can go to it here. Bare Bones Chapter 2, from page 11 to page, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. Like, they outline all the rules. Like, it's 6 pages, and you kind of understand how to play the game. I just think that that's brilliant. Not many games can do that. Certainly not many of my games, for instance, can really do that. Although Cowpunchers comes close, because Cowpunchers just have some genetic lineage to Star Wars D6. Even though I started writing Cowpunchers before I read this, and the concept of a D6 dice pool game was already in my head prior to reading this, as I read this, I was like, oh, there's some stuff, especially for Cowpunchers Reloaded, there's some stuff in here that would work really well in Cowpunchers. So the two are very genetically linked in as far as game lineage is concerned for me, because there's definitely a lot of influence from this now in the new Cowpunchers. So and in that, like, I just in one page I think I explained the basics of the rules and how it works because it's just so simple. I just like simple games like that. You know, they don't like I understand the crunch can add some realness to it and some player options and GM options, but the I also like where the rules sort of fade back and it allows the players to really get immersed. Because once you start doing, in my opinion, too much accounting, um, then it becomes a little less immersive. I know that's just my personal opinion. I know some people are very different in their opinion of that. But again, this is why I like BX as a game system as well, or Rule Cyclopedia, because it's a big book. You can see it up there. It's a big book, but it is easy and smooth to run, in my opinion. Even Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, which I'm running as well, is not super crunchy. It's more Gygax explanations of rules that make it feel like it's probably crunchy, but once you understand it, it's not that bad. So that's West End Game Star Wars D6. Tell me the kind of games you ran, and going forward, this is kind of what I'm thinking of doing. I'm probably gonna do some more videos of like just random game videos of things that I like, but I would like to know stuff that you'd like me to do a deep dive on in the future. So I might make a poll. I'll ask here. One thing I've been thinking of is going over original Dungeons and Dragons, kind of reading through it and looking at it, and kind of doing a video series of like how I would run it pre-supplement 1. So supplement 1 is where, you know, we kind of get the different polyhedral dice, whereas like original D&D is all D6 based and a D20 mostly. Like all the hit dice are D6, all damage die are D6, and you're given 2 options of the new attack resolution method, or you could use chainmail. So tell me what you think if you'd like to see a youngin' like me talk about OD&D and kind of get in. What I've been doing over the last few months is just sort of reading OD&D and like trying to get myself in the mindset of, if I was around in 1974 and I was given this book, if I was just given chainmail and the three little brown books in the white box, how would I construct the game? Because to me, it feels like OD&D is more of a toolbox rather than a complete necessary game itself. You know, it is a complete game, but it isn't, right? Because there's so many holes and there's so many things left up to just referee, DM fiat, right? A judgment, discretion. So yeah, if you're interested in that, let me know and sign off in the comments if that's what you would like to see. Otherwise, I'm not sure what I would cover next. Maybe the One Ring 2nd edition, or which I'm going to be doing some solo gaming with too. I got Strider mode, and I'm going to be doing more solo gaming with Scarlet Heroes as well, so keep an eye out for that. I'm not sure when those videos will drop or how often, but there will be more of those. And yeah, whatever you think would be interesting. Another old game that I think would be interesting to talk about is Worlds Beyond, which is an old sci-fi game, so that's also an option as well. If you'd like to see that, I can go over that as well. So let me know in the comments. I think original Dungeons and Dragons would be very interesting to cover. I know other people have done it before, but maybe you guys are interested in how I would run the game if I was again limited only to the white box, 3 little tan books, and chainmail. That's all I had access to. No supplement 1. So yeah, let me know in the comments. If you like what I do, please like, subscribe, share. If you want to support the channel, you can support right here on YouTube, or you can support on Guilded, on the Guilded server. Link is in the link tree, link below, as well as Subscribestar. So yeah, I appreciate those of you that have supported the channel. It really means a lot to me. I love talking about this kind of stuff and talking about games in the hobby and going over games like this. It's just a lot of fun. So that's all I have for you. Just a little conclusion. I'll talk a little bit about the play-by-post game that I'm doing of this, and maybe there'll be more updates in the future as more maybe interesting things come about. Follow me on Twitter too. I often give a lot of recaps of my games in Twitter threads on Twitter. So recently I just did one for my Advanced Dungeons and Dragons game, which nearly became a TPK. Only the magic user escaped this time. Both the cleric and the fighter died. Guys just don't want to hire hirelings, although I think they're going to start considering it now. So that's it. That's all I have for you. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.